ladies and gentlemen. I'm Fredrick von Mierers, welcoming you to another platform of the Eternal Values. Of course, with me, I have the eternal co-host of the Eternal Values, which is Mr. John Andreadis, and our eternal cohort and friend, Paul Hinton, whom you've seen in previous shows, who discussed the geometrical forms of the various atoms and that process to our audience. Tonight, we're going to discuss Dr. Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla, two towering giants of the Western world. Nikola Tesla, who invented alternating current and was backed by Mr. Westinghouse, Lord Westinghouse if you wish, at that time. And of course, Walter Russell, who was certainly a dean of the arts, a master sculptor, engineer, designer. And unfortunately, these two great towering minds have been virtually forgotten. Tonight, we hope to reacquaint the audiences across America with the accomplishments of these two great towering scientific and artistic minds. And through the example of their lives, show the unity of science, physics, math, philosophy, and all world religions, to which they adhered. John?
Well, first we're going to discuss Dr. Walter Russell, who is considered to be the modern Leonardo. He was excellent, the first in his field in sculpture, which he didn't even begin until he was 56 years old, as a painter, as an ice skating champion, as a horse trainer and horseback rider of Arabian stallions, which he bred. He was also, in the later part of his life, finishing the last phase of his great life, to which he lived past the 90th year. He was also a physicist who discovered and was really the father of the atomic age, as in 1926 he discovered the transuranium elements of neptunium and plutonium, though while he discovered them in the chart of his chemical elements, they were named uridium and urium. He was the true founder of the unified field in reality, because the principles that he espoused show the unification of the four forces in physics, and realized that only in 1946 did he receive any credit that he discovered the transuranium elements which gave way to the atomic bomb. And in the future, he will be given credit for being the father of the new physics. For I tell you this, that as he was a good friend of Nikola Tesla, who was the founder and the father of the electrical age, even beyond Edison, Tesla said to him, "A mind like yours, you must do exactly what Leonardo did, and bury your inventions and discoveries in copper vats, and only when mankind opens them in 1,000 years will they be able to understand them." Right now, the major part of his work is at the estate that he established in Swannanoa, Virginia, and in the Smithsonian Institution. Paul will give you more insight into the life of the great, extraordinary man, Dr. Walter Russell.
Walter Russell was, of course, a Bostonian. And, of course, in Virginia, the palace in which he lived was as huge and as grand as the breakers that the Vanderbilts lived in Newport. Paul.
Walter Russell was entirely self-educated from the age of 13 and self-supporting because of the family reversals from his great family.
They had great wealth, and in the 13th year, they had unfortunate reverses. Yes.
And he entirely educated himself. He worked as an architect, designing $80 million worth of buildings.
In the 1920s and 30s.
For instance, the Hotel des Artistes on the west side of New York City.
Also the Alwyn Court, the extraordinary building on 58th and 7th Avenue, with all the sculpture. Mm-hmm. He also, excuse me, I just wanted to mention one thing, because this is important. He was the father of the cooperative idea. In other words, all the cooperative apartments that we have now, when he originally started it, it was based upon the universal laws of balance, because he was completely in tune with the laws of nature, not the real estate rip-offs that are happening nowadays, where the only one that makes money is the agent. His system was that a group of people would come together and live in extraordinary surroundings and share the expenses to perpetuate the benefit of all.
The beauty. To perpetuate the beauty of their surroundings.
Also, he was the one that began the duplex and triplex apartments in New York and all over the world. If it were not for his influence at that time, they may not have been discovered or utilized in the way that they have been. Also, the tall ceilings to give mankind a concept of space, also for the artists, so that they would have room to work and inspiration from on high.
That famous building on Central Park South, as well, and the one on Central Park West.
The Des Artistes.
The Hotel des
67.
Artistes, of course,
Right.
has
All those high ceilings, 14-foot high ceilings.
triplexes as well as duplexes, and he, of course, built and designed that.
Penthouses.
The original Pierre Hotel he also designed on 47th Street as well. Not only as an architect did he excelled as a painter, an illustrator, and a sculptor, and John mentioned he started at the age of 56 doing his first work for Thomas Edison, commemorating that great man.
And he was the one that did the sculpture of the medal, the Edison medal, by the way. So all the people that received the Edison medal, it is because of Dr. Walter Russell's work that his face is shown as it is there. He also did Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Theodore Roosevelt's children. He painted them. He sculpted Roosevelt's face. Mark Twain, Charles Goodyear, all the most amazing people, the brilliant minds that fathered the greatness of the industrial age.
He was influential and friends with Mark Twain, FDR, Theodore Roosevelt. He rode horses with Roosevelt. He influenced Adolph Oakes, the owner of the New York Times, and he was also very influential in forming the Kiwanis Clubs of America and the Rotary Club. Not only did he form those clubs, but he was influential with the Boy Scout movements. And at the same time, as John mentioned, he was a great physicist, discovering the two elements that led to the production of the atomic bomb, and his pioneering work with the hydrogen isotopes of deuterium and tritium led to the discovery of heavy water, which was also necessary for nuclear fission processes.
One of the most important things that Dr. Russell pioneered for this country, mind you, is that though he was the father of the atomic age, you can truly say, because he was the one that discovered that these elements even existed, but he was a great pioneer in going against the structure and saying you must not get involved with nuclear fission because it will destroy the planet. And he described in 1957 in a book that he wrote with his wife called The Atomic Suicide that there will be mutations in the cells of the body that will destroy the immune system if we continue on with our atomic explosions. And that will just wreak such a plague upon this planet that mankind will never be able to live it down. And he described the evil and horrible effects that radioactivity would have upon the people. That if these atomic bombs go off, which they have been, unfortunately, because they didn't listen to him or Oppenheimer, then of course the result will be more. The price that we will have to pay will be more than we're able to pull out of the depths of our pockets.
Yes, he stated flatly that we believe that such use of atomic power would destroy all organic life on this planet for many centuries. And remember, he viewed the first 50 years of the 20th century, which he did live through, as a degeneration from the progress that man had enjoyed through the centuries of the Renaissance and the 18th and 19th century. And the nuclear power that we enjoy now is the product of a bomb and of wars. And it was the bomb first that we wanted to work out. And the products of our nuclear power plants now are used to make the bombs. The plutonium that the power plants manufacture is essential in the making of the bombs. And it was not the electricity originally that we were interested in. We were interested in destruction.
Which is the father of the atomic age, evil, you could say. And furthermore, the radioactivity that is a result of these power plants is what destroys all life in the areas around. Even the one, I think, at Indian Point in New York is built upon a fault line that is active, and thank God they've turned it off. But the thing is that the people are not even, the engineers of these power plants, the nuclear power plants, which is not even a faithful source of energy because of the results and the ramifications that it wreaks upon us, do not even take into consideration the geographical sites that they decide to build upon. So if you can imagine the insanity and the stupidity of what we're doing in this culture, in this society, the poisoned water, the destroyed organic life, the radiation in the food, in the water, in the air, the pollution because of the misuse of the chemicals.
All this destroys the immunological system.
Which is exactly what Dr. Russell said. And the thing is that he said it is foolish, of course, to keep this knowledge from mankind, because you can't lock knowledge in a box. It's open to anyone, and it will come out anyway. It's God's will and the destiny of the planet that mankind know these things. However, what we have done with them is our test, and they have been manipulated by adverse forces and the forces of darkness to lead mankind down the primrose path to destruction, which is why greed and anger and lust for power rule this world. It is not the decision or the attempt to establish the principles of Christ and the great prophets throughout all the religions. which is unfortunate, but it is true. Dr. Russell came in his life, being so well-rounded, simply to show us what is possible if we simply attune our minds to the greatness and the glory of God within. He is a prototype of the true American. Unfortunately, his example is not put forth before mankind in America as an ideal, so therefore we hardly know about him. However,
because most people, it would make them, with the accomplishments, Einstein was a great scientist and brilliant. But if you compare Einstein to Walter Russell, and Walter Russell's accomplishments, Walter Russell was a towering genius, Leonardo da Vinci.
But if you compare anyone
in everything he did, Einstein was a great physicist, yes?
And a great humanitarian.
And a great humanitarian, but Walter Russell was not only a great humanitarian, a great physicist, a great inventor, a great architect, painter, sculptor, all towering. And of course, when humanity has to look at such giants, they cannot accept their own deficiencies.
However, it's the only way for us, our only way out is to emulate those principles. For he taught that anyone can live that. Yes?
Yes.
So therefore what we have to do is become like unto that by tuning into the power of the Christ consciousness or of God consciousness.
We must make this
in
clear.
Our souls.
When we say Christ consciousness, we don't mean it from the Christian point of view. We mean it from a totally universal point of view. We mean the Christ consciousness as exemplified by Rama, Krishna, Buddha, and Lord Jesus, but not from churchianity's point of view.
It's the infinite potential within all of us to become great, to aspire to divinity, and to express that divinity in all that we do. Now, Dr. Russell was a herald of this concept, as he proved in his life the versatility of a man of realization. And it is a shame, and it is a tragedy, that mankind is not more aware of his works. What we're trying to do here is to make you, all of you, more aware of the giants and the geniuses that have inspired the greatness, the possible greatness of this world. Unfortunately, it has been bastardized by sick, demented minds, which is a result of this evil power play that rules this world. However, if you look back to them, also Nikola Tesla, whom we'll be discussing in a moment, you realize that there has been such possibility upon this planet, the possibility for the golden age, for the millennium to manifest here.
Many times,
especially since the turn of the century. But instead, what have we done? We've turned all of this possibility to the dark side. And remember this, that Nikola Tesla in 1895 spoke about communication with other planets. He spoke about robots that could teach themselves how to think. He discovered the alternating current. He was the first one to harness the energy from the Niagara Falls. It was his Tesla coil that is used in almost every television and radio today to generate enough power. He learned how to send power through the earth hundreds of miles away in a controlled way so that he could light a house.
And he did all of his experiments in a white tie and tails.
The major ones. And he did it in 1895. He spoke of the unified field. But who hears of him?
Aristocrat.
It's unbelievable. He did. He did all of his experiments, and his major experiments, in white tie and tails. You can imagine.
He was completely mad and ate at the best restaurants every day and had the best time. Not that we say you should do that, but of course he was extraordinary. Many people assume that all the people that created anything or did anything great, that they were all born on a park bench in Brooklyn or the Bronx, you know. And that's not true at all. The great towering minds that contributed to the firm concepts upon which this nation is based were absolutely universal.
And gentlemen.
And ladies and gentlemen.
Think of this. Nikola Tesla worked for Edison. Edison said to him, I'll pay you $50,000 if you can improve upon my inventions. Tesla, in a week, gave his engineering ideas that improved greatly upon what Edison did. And Edison never gave him the money, saying it was a practical joke. Nikola Tesla looked at Mr. Edison, tipped his hat, and walked out the door and said, I'm terribly sorry, I can't work for you anymore. He then, because he could no longer find funding to fund his experiments, had to work as a ditch digger on the railroad. This is true. And then some friends of his that were listening to his ideas when he would talk at lunch had a connection with George Westinghouse, whom he introduced him to. Of course, Mr. Westinghouse met Nikola Tesla, and Nikola Tesla told him his ideas for the alternating current. And as he invented and patented the idea, Westinghouse gave Nikola Tesla in 1886 $1 million in cash for the invention.
For 40 patents.
For 40 patents.
Right.
Now, what did Nikola Tesla do? He found his friend that introduced him to George Westinghouse and immediately gave him $500,000 in 1885 without even thinking about it. Everything he did was with the highest ethics and morality. All that he tried to do was envision the perfect world for mankind where we would be free from so much menial labor and therefore free to attend to more important spiritual aspects.
Yes, go on.
Therefore, he was a philosopher. He envisioned the new race. He described the changes that would take place biologically in mankind as we aspire to a higher ideal. But he was not, as many people say, an occultist and into the occult and the mystery schools back then. He was a great genius and a man who understood truly the secrets of nature. He was not involved in the fringe of society. He was involved right at the core of the secrets and at the core of the work. And unfortunately, he was so far ahead of his time, which is a great tragedy, that he was ostracized for his ideas. Imagine thinking of computers that could think for themselves in 1895. He discovered ways to use the theories of vibrations. In this sense, he worked in correspondence with Dr. Russell. That by understanding the theory of vibration, he was able to hook up a machine using this principle. It is known that all armies, when they cross over a bridge, march out of step. Because when they march in step, they set up a vibration that sometimes collapses the bridge that they're walking on. Oftentimes, if a pack of dogs runs across a bridge, this is a known fact in physics, the bridge sometimes collapses because they set up a vibration that completely opposes the natural vibration of the atoms in the bridge, and thus the bridge is caused to collapse. Using this theory and this principle, Nikola Tesla discovered and used a device where he would be able to neutralize the vibrations of any object and therefore destroy it. To prove this, what he did is he bought a huge link in a chain that was, I think, 6 inches thick in diameter and 2 feet long. He attached this device to it and turned it on, this vibrating device. It went on for 15 minutes and nothing was happening. Then, as the vibrations in the device found the synchronization with the chain, the link, slowly but surely the link began to vibrate back and forth, and then it exploded and shattered into 1,000,000 pieces because he found out that he understood the use of electromagnetic vibrations and the universal magnetic field through electricity. Dr. Russell, when you read his book, Atomic Suicide, any scientist should really look into it seriously, or The Secret of Light, he also describes the unification of the forces. He also, the Li-Yang theory in 1956 won the Nobel Prize for discovering that conservation of energy, this is for scientists, mind you, I don't expect everyone to understand this, but it's important that you understand their depths, that the conservation of energy is not always saved, the Li-Yang theory proves. Now, in Atomic Suicide, Dr. Russell disproves that. So therefore, all of these things, these minds, were towering geniuses 50 to 100 years before their time. Yet, unfortunately, they're not even recognized today because they were so controversial in their ideas. It is very important that we go back to think about what they were doing. And any scientists or physicists, especially students that are interested in really doing something for humanity, it would be good to look into their works. And this way, perhaps you can improve upon them or go farther into what they were doing.
Of course, J.P. Morgan really destroyed Tesla.
Unfortunately, because...
Unfortunately, it was it's a pity for Mr. J.P. Morgan's soul what he did to Nikola Tesla. I think the audience should know what he did.
What he did was that Tesla had this idea to build a huge city in Long Island called Wardenclyffe, in which he would use all of his electrical devices to power the city without using wires. Also, Nikola Tesla was able to control the weather this way, and this has been proven. He was able to create lightning by himself, man-made lightning. And ball lightning he understood as well, which is a physicist's enigma. In any case, J.P. Morgan said, I'll give you $150,000 to start your project, and then we'll see what happens. But you have to give me 51% of all of your patents and the profits. And Nikola Tesla said, that's fine as long as I have enough money to continue on with my experiments. Now, Morgan took 6 months to give him the money. At that time, the whole world found out about the work that was being done. So they jacked up the prices of all the electrical appliances and the products that Tesla would need. So because it took 6 months later and the prices were up, he was not able to procure the necessary materials to start with this project. And then Morgan refused to give him more money, said that you broke your part of the deal, didn't support Tesla anymore. All the work that he had done was going to waste, unfortunately. And Morgan and Tesla had a contract saying that they would keep their work silent so that nobody would know of the goings-on between them. Instead, Morgan told everyone what he was doing, though Tesla never said a word, double-crossed Nikola Tesla, and where J.P. Morgan refused to tread, the world refused to tread. So therefore, he was no longer able to find backing, and this great possibility was destroyed. Unfortunately, Mr. Morgan didn't listen to the idea of this great revolutionary mind, which could have transformed the Earth at that time in the early 1900s. And this is a great tragedy for our history and for the world as it is.
Right, in 1904, he wanted to build the first Radio City And this is what the project was at Wardenclyffe. And it was not complete until 30 years later by other parties. And his project went completely to waste, and the buildings are just ruins if they still exist now. And if Tesla's theories could be followed up in other ways, we might be able to eliminate the need for nuclear power and its destructiveness, because he did demonstrate that he could send electricity through the earth 26 miles away without wires to light light bulbs.
In a whole city.
Right.
And mind you this, he said in 1895, the next energy source for mankind will be hydrogen, using free hydrogen gas in the universe. And then mankind will learn how to harness the rays of the sun effectively. 1895, he said this. Also, he discovered a way to create levitation with objects. He would, using the electrical force fields, he made iron float. So did a gentleman named George Steinmetz in Salt Lake City, a physicist, excuse me.
No, he was in New York.
Excuse me, Steinmetz was in New York, I'm sorry. Tesla used to stand up in front of his machines at a low amperage and run 1,000,000 volts through his body, and his whole body would begin to glow. It's funny, when he worked in Colorado, a 3-mile radius around his laboratory was lit up with blue sparks all the time just coming out. Very safe electricity. He was incredible. He envisioned mankind taking electrical baths. Instead of using water, they would put themselves in a very high voltage, low amperage electricity bath, and it would completely annihilate all the dirt and the germs and everything around their body and rejuvenate them at the same time.
Yes. And he also envisioned the laser ray, or the death ray, that we're now working on in the Star Wars program. And back then in the 20s and 30s, envisioned 12 stations around America which would protect America in any way from any planes or missiles coming towards it, and they all thought he was crazy. He wanted to build the laser, as well as John mentioned, electric baths for man, and he even had to go as far as to demonstrate that alternating current was safe, as to stand up in front of a stage of people, and he did this at the World's Fair, and have the energy running through him, just to prove that alternating current was safe, because Edison was the founder of direct current, which couldn't travel more than a mile to power anything. And alternating current, of course, can go miles and miles and 30 miles out. You can be very far away from your generator, which in essence makes electricity practical for us. And only because of that are we able to receive the power from 30 or 40, 50 miles away. Yeah. And when Tesla went forward with his AC, Edison stopped him and stood firmly in the way of progress, and Edison refused to help him in any way, and Edison went as far as to finance research for the electric chair using alternating current, so the public would think that alternating current was dangerous and used only for the electric chair. Can you imagine?
But mind you this.
Thomas Edison was a devious and
yes, it was incredible what he did.
scheming monster.
Because what he did was not even with real alternating current. He used his direct current generators and hooked up an alternating current device to it. So it wasn't even pure alternating current. It's incredible. It's very unfortunate. The greatest tragedy of all is that you don't even know of these great men. Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla, who contributed so much to the founding of this country, who were so close with the great authors and the writers, Mark Twain, President Roosevelt, Dr. Russell. Nikola Tesla, of course, was he was the social spectacle of New York for 20 years. He knew everyone, and he was deeply involved with all of these people, which greatly affected the evolution of mankind as we know it today. Unfortunately, it's been bastardized by selfish and greedy people, not according to their work and not according to their plan. Dr. Russell used to lecture the international business machines when it first began in ethical business practices. Instead of using the slogan, "The buyer must beware," or if it's a sale, you can do whatever you want as long as it's legal, he recommended that they try to share the goodness of what they had to offer with humanity, instead of trying to take advantage of the customer, to try to help the customer. This is a law of balance, of giving and re-giving, of giving and taking and giving more, that is found everywhere in the universe. Walter Russell understood deeply that physics and philosophy are integral, one in their approach. One works through psychology, one works through the physical form, but they're both aspects of the same thing. So he had a great deal to do with the evolution of ethics and morality in this country, which of course has been bastardized over the years, unfortunately. Please, we urge you, find out about these men. Even in the Encyclopedia Britannica, you don't even find mention of Dr. Russell, which is an unbelievable tragedy. And Nikola Tesla, in the Micropedia, they have one page, and in the Macropedia, they have a few lines about him. So you can imagine, there's not even anything written about these two great geniuses. Look into them. Go to the library.
It's almost a conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy. It must be. There's no other way that they wouldn't be known about.
Yeah, the discoveries of electricity. Tesla wanted to take the electricity, the differences between the sky and the earth, and use the electric voltage that would flow into an antenna and create a radio and power the radio. And a crystal radio, that's what it does. In essence, the antenna is sent up and the electricity flows in and down through the antenna, and you filter out through the frequency that you want to pick up on, and the crystal amplifies it, and it's the natural electricity that's already there between the earth and the sky that powers this radio. And that can be used with crystals, and Henry Moray in Salt Lake City also used this as well. And he powered 500 kilowatt appliances indefinitely with this procedure, just using the natural electricity in the earth. And you could send that electricity by having a standing wave all the way around the earth, and just by putting stakes in the ground or a receiver, you could receive the electricity anywhere, and it could be virtually free. And it's a shame that these discoveries have been covered up, and Tesla did die alone and almost penniless in his hotel room in 1943.
At the age of
87 he was. And one last thing. You have to realize that one of the major reasons that they weren't remembered is because their inventions cost no money, and mankind couldn't make money off of what they were doing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Jules Verne so aptly put it, anything that one man can imagine, another man can make real, is an applicable epitaph to the great Nikola Tesla and Walter Russell. We hope you will look into the books.
The first two by Dr. Russell. The first one, Atomic Suicide, and The Secret of Light by Dr. Russell, published by the University for Science and Philosophy. And then an extraordinary book, which was the source for the Encyclopedia Britannica information on Nikola Tesla, called Lightning in His Hands, The Life Story of Nikola Tesla, by Inez Hunt and Juanetta W. Draper. Read these books, all of you who are interested in these subjects, and educate yourself to the greatness of the minds that have come to this planet, yet have unfortunately and so tragically been forgotten.
For as we know, Nikola Tesla died penniless at the New York Hotel on Times Square at 87 years old, having made millions of dollars. And this was mainly due to the monstrous acts of the Wall Street tycoon and richest man in the world, Mr. J.P. Morgan, as well as Thomas Edison. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. God bless all Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and Hindus with another platform of the eternal values on Nikola Tesla and Dr. Walter Russell, Dean of the Arts.